Grandpa Joe had been my hero since childhood. While my parents worked long hours and my siblings chased their own dreams, Grandpa was always there. He taught me to fish, helped with homework, and shared stories about his younger days that made me feel like anything was possible. But as I grew older and my cousins became successful professionals, I felt like the family disappointment. I dropped out of college to care for my sick mother, then worked a series of blue-collar jobs while everyone else climbed corporate ladders. My cousin Mark was a lawyer, Jessica worked in finance, and Ryan had his own accounting firm. Poor Jake. I'd overheard my Aunt Susan tell my mother. He never really found his way, did he? At family gatherings, the conversation always revolved around promotions, new houses, and expensive vacations. I'd sit quietly in the corner, knowing my latest job as a night security guard at a warehouse wasn't worth mentioning. Only Grandpa treated me like I mattered. He'd seek me out at every gathering, asking about my life with genuine interest, never making me feel less important than my successful cousins. Success isn't about money, Jake, he'd tell me during our monthly lunches. It's about character, and you've got more character than all of them combined. When Grandpa was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at 84, the family went through the motions of concern. Visiting schedules were discussed, treatment options debated, and arrangements made for his care. But as his condition worsened and he was moved to hospice, those visits became less frequent. "There's really no point," Mark said during one of our family conference calls. "He sleeps most of the time, and when he's awake, he's confused. It's depressing. The doctors say he has days, maybe a week at most," Jessica added. "I think we should remember him as he was not this." When Grandpa specifically asked to see me, my family's reaction was predictable. "Don't waste your time, Jake," Susan said dismissively. "He's dying anyway. There's nothing you can do. He probably won't even recognize you," Ryan added. "Save yourself the heartbreak." But I couldn't stay away. The man who'd never given up on me deserved better than to die alone because his family found his dying inconvenient. I started visiting Grandpa every day after my night shift, spending mornings sitting beside his bed, holding his hand, and talking to him even when he seemed to be sleeping. The nurses told me he was more alert when I was there. "He waits for you," one of them said. "His vitals improve when you arrive." Some days Grandpa was sharp and talkative, sharing memories and asking about my life. Other days he was weak and confused, but he always seemed to know I was there. "The others don't come much," he said one afternoon, his voice barely a whisper. "They're busy, Grandpa. You know how it is." "I know exactly how it is, son. I know who shows up and who doesn't." 3 weeks into his hospice stay, I arrived to find Grandpa more alert than he'd been in days. The nurses said it was common, a final surge of energy before the end. "Jake," he said, gripping my hand with surprising strength. "I need to tell you something important." "What is it, Grandpa?" 1247 Oak Street. The blue house with the white shutters. Go there tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock sharp. "Grandpa, I don't understand." "Just promise me you'll go. It's important. I promise." He smiled then, looking more peaceful than he had in weeks. "Good boy. You were always the good one, Jake. Always." Those were the last coherent words he spoke. Grandpa passed away quietly that evening while I held his hand, just the two of us in the dimly lit hospice room. The funeral 3 days later was well attended. My cousins gave touching eulogies about their beloved grandfather, sharing carefully selected memories that painted them as devoted grandchildren. No one mentioned that I'd been the only family member present when he died. After the service, the family gathered to discuss Grandpa's modest estate, his small house, his old car, and his savings account. Nothing substantial, but enough to split between his grandchildren. "Not much there," Mark said, reviewing the financial documents. "Maybe 15,000 after expenses. Split 4 ways, that's not even worth the paperwork." "What about his house?" Jessica asked. "Mortgage is underwater. The neighborhood's gone downhill. We'll probably have to take a loss just to get rid of it." I listened to them calculate Grandpa's worth in dollars and cents, reducing 84 years of life to a disappointing financial summary. The next morning, I remembered Grandpa's mysterious instructions. 1247 Oak Street, 10 o'clock sharp. It seemed crazy to follow the confused ramblings of a dying man, but I'd promised. The address led me to a modest ranch house in an older neighborhood, the kind of area my successful cousins would dismiss as declining property values. The blue house with white shutters, exactly as Grandpa had described. I knocked on the door at exactly 10 o'clock. A distinguished older woman answered, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "You must be Jake," she said warmly. "I'm Margaret Walsh. Joe told me you'd be coming. Please come in." I followed her into a neat living room filled with antique furniture and family photos. "I was Joe's financial advisor for 40 years, Margaret explained. "He asked me to meet with you personally to discuss his estate." "His estate?" But the lawyer already went over everything. "There's just the house and a small savings account." Margaret smiled mysteriously. That's what he wanted them to think. Joe was very specific about keeping his real assets private until after the funeral. She opened a thick file folder on her coffee table. "Jake, your grandfather was considerably wealthier than anyone realized. He'd been investing quietly for decades. Real estate, stocks, bonds. He lived modestly and never talked about money because he wanted to see how his family would treat him without knowing what he was worth." I stared at her, confused. "I don't understand." Joe owned 17 rental properties throughout the state. His investment portfolio is worth $2.8 million. His life insurance policy has a $500,000 payout. Combined with his other assets, his estate is valued at approximately $4.2 million. The numbers didn't make sense. That's impossible. Grandpa lived in that tiny house, drove an old truck. He lived below his means intentionally. He was testing his family, Jake. He wanted to see who would love him for who he was, not what he had. Margaret pulled out a sealed envelope with my name on it. "He wrote this letter for you after his cancer diagnosis." With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and read Grandpa's familiar handwriting. "Jake, if you're reading this, I'm gone and Margaret has told you about the money. I spent years watching my grandchildren, seeing who they really were when they thought I had nothing to offer except love and time. Your cousins were always too busy for an old man with no money. But you never missed our lunches, never treated me like a burden, never calculated whether I was worth your time. When I was dying, you were the only one who showed up consistently. Not because you expected anything, but because you cared. The money means nothing if it goes to people who only value what you can give them. You valued me when you thought I had nothing. Now everything I have is yours. Grandpa." I read the letter 3 times before the full meaning sank in. "He left me everything. Every penny," Margaret confirmed. "Your cousins are mentioned in the will. They each receive $1, with a note explaining that their inheritance reflects the amount of time they spent caring about their grandfather's welfare." I sat in stunned silence, overwhelmed by Grandpa's incredible gift and his devastating judgment of the rest of the family. "There's more," Margaret continued. "Joe recorded a video message for you. Would you like to see it?" She led me to her computer, where Grandpa appeared on screen, looking weak but determined. He must have recorded this just days before he died. "Jake, my boy, if you're watching this, then you kept your promise to visit that address. You always kept your promises. That's why I'm leaving you everything. Your cousins think success is about what you achieve for yourself. But real success is about who you are when no one's watching, how you treat people who can't do anything for you. You were successful before you knew about this money, Jake. Now you have the resources to do something meaningful with that success." The video ended with Grandpa's familiar smile, the same expression he'd worn when teaching me to fish, helping with homework, or just listening to my problems when no one else would. Margaret handled the legal transfer efficiently. Within a week, I owned 17 profitable rental properties and had access to investment accounts worth millions. But first, I had to face my family. The call from Mark came Tuesday morning. "Jake, we need to talk. There are rumors going around about Grandpa having other assets. Something about rental properties?" "What kind of rumors?" "Look, if there's more money than we thought, it needs to be divided equally. We're family." "Are we?" "Because when Grandpa was dying, you said visiting him was a waste of time. That was different. We were trying to protect you from false hope. But if he had money hidden somewhere..." "He didn't have money hidden, Mark. He had money invested, wisely and quietly, for 40 years. There was a long pause. "How much money?" "Enough to know that he was testing us. and most of us failed. The emergency family meeting was called for that weekend. I arrived to find all my cousins, their parents, and even some extended family members I rarely saw. "Jake," Susan began, "we understand there may have been some confusion about Dad's estate." "No confusion. Just the truth he kept hidden to see who really cared about him." I placed Margaret's documentation on the table. Property deeds, investment statements, insurance policies, all clearly showing Grandpa's true net worth. The silence was deafening as they processed the numbers. "For $0.2 million, Jessica whispered. "And it all goes to Jake," Mark read from the will summary. "This can't be legal." "It's completely legal." Grandpa was mentally competent. He had excellent legal counsel, and he made his decision based on 40 years of watching how his family treated him. "But we're his family too," Ryan protested. "We deserve our share." "You got exactly what you deserved. $1 each, divided among the three of you." Grandpa was very specific about that. Susan was crying now. He was confused at the end. "Jake, you took advantage of a sick old man." "I sat with a dying old man who wanted company. You couldn't be bothered to visit because he was dying anyway." "We didn't know," Mark shouted. "If we'd known he had money, then you would have visited," I finished quietly. "And that's exactly why he didn't tell you." The legal challenges started immediately, just as Margaret had predicted they would. My cousins hired expensive lawyers and contested the will, claiming undue influence and mental incompetence. But Grandpa had prepared for this too. His lawyers had documented his mental state carefully, including video recordings of him explaining his reasoning. The hospice staff testified about which family members visited regularly and which didn't. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. The will was valid, Grandpa was competent, and his decision to reward loyalty over blood relation was his right to make. My cousins had to pay court costs exceeding $50,000, money they couldn't really afford now that their expected inheritances had disappeared. I used part of Grandpa's legacy to establish a foundation supporting hospice care and end-of-life dignity. The rental properties provide steady income to fund programs ensuring no one dies alone because their family finds visiting inconvenient. I also quit my security guard job and went back to school, earning the degree I'd abandoned to care for my mother. Grandpa's belief in me gave me the confidence to pursue dreams I'd given up on. My cousins still reach out occasionally, usually around holidays when guilt overwhelms pride. Sometimes they suggest family reunions or attempt reconciliations, but their calls always come with subtle hints about financial assistance or investment opportunities. I'm polite but distant. Grandpa's test revealed who they really were, and that truth can't be undone with apologies or good intentions that only emerged after money entered the equation. The most important part of Grandpa's legacy wasn't the money, it was the lesson. He showed me that my worth isn't measured by my job title or bank account, but by the love I give when there's nothing to be gained in return. I visit his grave every month, bringing flowers and updates about the foundation's work. Sometimes I tell him about families I've helped stay together during difficult end-of-life transitions, or about scholarships I've funded for students who, like me, had to delay their education for family responsibilities. "You were right, Grandpa," I always tell him before leaving. "Success isn't about what you achieve. It's about who you are when no one's watching." And thanks to his incredible final gift, now everyone is watching me become the man he always believed I could be.